made a few moments for people to kind of listen in. How's everybody this afternoon? Yeah, as you may have read that is the title, I will be reading out loud the first few episodes of my Power Memory series. I'm going to be looking at it in the Kindle ebook format that I have out because that displays better, I think, as well as going over just some general behind the scenes thoughts and overall why I made certain decisions, general fun facts that I may have about certain scenes or lines as we go along. And honestly, I'm open for questions or thoughts or comments. Maybe this is my first time doing a stream like this one, but I'm excited to experience and learn along this journey with you. And what? Let's start right at the beginning. Episode 1, Empty Span. And I might be like, why is it episodes and not chapters if this is a book? Well, because this is also live on Cinderella as a serial there, and that kind of default switch from episodes. And I wanted to use the same wording for everything. That way, episode 1 here is the same as episode 1 there. Everybody sees this and that. I pressed the wrong button. Apologies for that. Okay. So, permission to splash water in Mother Dearest. I will not be late today. Opening line from Sesame. First thing you see. And oh boy, does this line tell you a lot about her personality. Just off the get-go. Then, she's asking permission, which is interesting, despite the fact that this is pure irreverence. And I'm sure this particular characteristic, this irreverence, is going to get her into trouble when she starts going to the boarding school that she's headed off to. But the fact that she asks permission is also kind of interesting. Now, admittedly, these first 2 episodes were the only ones I've had to completely rewrite. I had to completely rewrite from scratch at some point. Just due to the nature of how the story kind of shifted from the initial concept to the version we have now. Uh, yeah, and this is this is the personality we're dealing with. This is who she is. Only as a last resort, my father responded calmly and without looking up from the all that he was making. Yeah, my father's just like, yeah, go ahead. You're meant to get the impression of this is relatively normal, like this is what a normal morning in this household would look like. This is the dynamic she grew up with, and will probably go a long way to explaining some of Sarah's humor later. And you may want to hurry whatever you do. Yeah, time is. They do not have infinite time. And whatever it is she's waking up for is probably super important, at least to her. I glanced at the time set of the microwave. 3 numbers taunting me with how little time I had left until the most important moment of my life. Okay. Yeah. She's a bit melodramatic, I think. But, and also she's 15, and I don't know about you, but I was a sneaky bit melodramatic at that age. The parents' bedroom was at the end of a small, hallway-like section of the house. More like an alcove that ended in a door that my mother had painted sunflower yellow. I opened the door loudly 3 times. Mom, I called. Today is the day for the entrance exams. I was Simon. I was going in. I opened the door to find my mother still under the blankets and for all purposes lost to the land of the living. She snored loudly. The black hair a matted mess that hid most of her head. I sighed. Mom, I called again. No movement. Somebody's a heavy sleeper. I stood next to her and shook her shoulder twice. Nothing. All right then. I took her just a few feet away in their master bathroom. Mom sputtered awake as soon as the cold water touched her skin. Yep, that's right. First thing our main case does is splash water on her sleeping mother. I'm sure this personality trait will not cause her any problems at all as she gets through. As she progresses through the story and is in a fancy boarding school, I'm sure this will cause her problems. Especially several episodes later when it starts to cause her problems. I'm up. I'm up. She rubbed her face and blinked a few times. Looked at me, my hands were wet, and I was already dressed for the day, and she frowned. The entrance exam. Dad is making breakfast. I suggest you hurry. I told her, then turned around and left. There was a flurry of noise in the room as I closed the door behind me and sighed. How much time do we have? I sat down on the counter and checked the time on the microwave. Eat something. It's going to be at least 20 minutes. So I took a plate with a ham and spinach omelet in front of me. Thank you. I know how much she means to you. I wish we succeed. Offered me a small smile. Well, it was a grin for him. His eyes were a proud like Ian. These were my nearly satisfied expression. According to Mom, it's a 5-stage test, and I'm getting graded in 9 categories. I just have to score an average of 75 across them all. 675 total or higher, confirmed. With a possible 900. I should be fine, unless the spellcheck requires passing. And there it was. And here we get our first big clue to some of the conflicts Sarah seems to be dealing with. Because it sounds like something's up with her ability to do magic. Also, yes, this is a fantasy series. The magics are going to be a thing. 4 words that would decide my fate and the trajectory of my future. The day didn't go well. If my entrance hinged on being able to cast a spell, I was doomed. Again, she's a bit melodramatic, but I mean, she's 15, a couple months from turning 16, and, a little bit stressed out. I would have no choice but to re-enter the human school system and live my life as if my main side of the family didn't exist. The thought terrified me. Whatever happens today and every day after, I'm proud of you, Serafina. Do you think I can do it? I finally gave a thoughtful head. I believe that if your mother is correct in having intended testing you, you would do just fine. I had a sigh of relief. I trusted my father's honesty. He said I had often been called too brutal for. It was reassuring. If he thought I couldn't do it, he would tell me. It was why he brought up spellcraft. It was the greatest hurdle and largest obstacle between me and what I wanted. Of course you will. My mother, her eyes were sparkling golden yellow, and her eyes still slightly damp from her last shower, walked into the room and threw her arms around my father. I trusted to it. She just let her hang off of him like they were still in their 20s, rather than fell into their 40s. Ah, wholesome family. Adorable. I was unamused. We'd spent the past year getting ready for this. Instead of the other kids, you won't be behind them, I made sure of that. Those old-timers haven't changed the way the entries in families held in over 1,000 years. I know my baby can do this. I'm 15, I reminded her dryly. Dad didn't have the decency to look sympathetic. He just looked charmed by it. God, they're in love. I'm so glad I will never be like that. Oh, hi, Kate. We need to go. Mother gasped. Tucked Dad in the cheek, grabbed my hand with enough force to pull me out of the chair. Lucky me, I was already done eating. Love you both, my father called after us, his mom cast a transport spell with smooth, circular hand motions. Waited once before the spell was finished. It was a little disorientating, being one place and then in seconds being somewhere entirely different. The architecture around me was stonework, old Gothic style with sacred gargoyle statues, stained glass. Still looks the same as when I took the entrance exam, Mom said quietly. I'm not sure I was meant to hear that. Come on, stay with me and follow the crowd. We were surrounded by dozens of people, all heading in the same direction. Mom barely looked at me as she grabbed my wrist, making sure I didn't get lost like some child. But I kept running around. Was she looking for something? No betrayed me? From the coworkers or classmates, maybe? She looked nervous. I can do this, Mom, I told her over the dull rumble of the crowd. I know, I just would rather not be recognized until you at least get inside the exam chamber. I'd rather not play the scene. I'll see what I can do. Let me see. Is that better? Is that better or is that worse? That's the wrong button. Oh. I frowned. I didn't mind that this isn't a Mary Dad and problematic for us. Ah. Hmm. Dear. Speaking before. Scary. Anything? Anything at all? It's cooking last time. Is this better? Is this better or is this worse? The pains of being a new streamer. Okay. That's annoying. I thought it was working, but I guess it decided not to work. Oh well. I'm just gonna remove that. My mom's decision to marry Dad had been problematic for her. There was a reason I'd never met my grandmother or anyone else on that side of the family. Yeah. Cinder's hasn't always made choices that everyone around her agrees with. But I'm pretty sure that's the fan in my computer, and I can't do anything about that. I was hoping that having my headset's microphone, I would be able to talk without having to hear that, but there's nothing I can do about that. It sucks. But, you know, it is what it is, unfortunately. Don't fret. Your mother's just being paranoid. Today is a big day for you, and you need to focus on doing your best. Whatever happens in there, I want you to know that I am, and always will be, proud of you. Thank you for your vote of confidence, Mom. She gave me a flat, narrowed-eyed look. I gave her a grin. She rolled her eyes, then stepped into the room. It was filled with lines of parents with their children, all filling out forms. Kids were all the same age as me. I noticed Mom glance around nervously, but then settled down. Was she looking for someone? Mom led the way. In moments, she was hastily scribbling down our information on parchment with a quill pen. I can't believe I'm actually doing this. You know, I was once part of the committee that ran these things. It's so strange being on this side of everything, she murmured to herself, not looking at me. When she was done, she rolled up the parchment, tossed it in the air, and snapped her fingers twice, and it was gone. More magic. And yeah. Lucinda used to work here. Used to work for this school. That's going to be very important. Now what? She looked at a pair of large wooden doors. Through there and just follow their instructions. Her voice wobbled a little. I sighed as the tears in her eyes got bigger. Mom, it's okay. I know. She sounded seconds from crying. Taking pity on my poor mother, I gave her what was meant to be a quick hug. She was having none of it. Mom, I'm not going anywhere yet. Don't care. Gave a weak attempt to shove her away. Mom, I have to go. She had mercy on me eventually, and left quickly before she changed her mind. I could hear her mumbling about me still being a baby, and rolled my eyes. Serafina and her parents is just cute. It would be 4 hours before I saw her again. 4 hours of exam testing. By the time we finished, I was exhausted and my head was pounding. I wasn't the type prone to migraines. This was highly unusual and vaguely concerning. Yeah, story time with me. And, random behind the scenes stuff as I think of it. But yeah, this is a big clue that there's something going on. The fact that Serafina specifically says that she's not used to headaches is meant to be a big deal and you should be taking notes. Mother was sitting outside on a stone bench under a shaded tree. Her eyes were focused on the crowd leaving the testing chamber with me. So I go from nervous to excited in an instant. How did it go? She asked. Fine, I told her as I winced. What's wrong? Headache. She blinked in confusion, then instantly switched to worried with her head mode. Where does it hurt? She asked, touching my forehead with the back of her hand. No fever, she muttered. Everywhere? I attempted to explain. Maybe you just need to relax. Come on, we'll go have some lunch. I closed my eyes to shield myself from the now overpowering sunlight, and let my mother pull me by the hand. I know! Yeah, if there was ever a stream to have, comfy blankets and tea, I have tea. It's great. The next thing I knew, I was sitting under an umbrella at a cafe table outside. Some water sat in front of me. You nearly fainted on me, Mom was explaining. What happened in there? I took a few written tests, I shrugged. It started as I was leaving.
Her frown grew deeper. Took a sip of water slowly. It didn't help the pain at all. Mom twitched nervously in front of me. We couldn't leave to go home quite yet. Not until he sent my results back, which could take another hour. If it starts to get worse, you will tell me. I will. I closed my eyes again. Blurry images of questions melted together with blinding light behind my eyelids. I pinched the bridge of my nose and took several deep breaths. Opened my eyes and gave my mother a reassuring smile, or at least an attempt at one. I don't think she was convinced. I pegged at lunch quietly. A simple toasted turkey sandwich with cheddar and apple spread. It wasn't helping. There was a slight poof sound, a soft pop just over our heads. A scroll landed in the center of the table and a black wax seal with the gold symbol of the Towers of Nine shaped in the center. Mom covered her face with her hands. Open it! I can't look! Lucinda, just a teensy bit dramatic. I rolled my eyes because I knew she couldn't see it. I picked up the scroll. When the seal came off, my headache vanished. Gone as it was never there to begin with. I wonder if that's strange or unusual for some reason. Okay. I read the contents out loud. Miss Seraphina Stewart's results for the entrance exam for the Towers of Nine School of Magic Study and Practice. Alchemy, 100. Brewing, 83. Monster Husbandry, 72. Geography, 85. History, 77. Spellcraft, 50. English, 74. Elements, 81. Homework, 64. Admittedly, most of these numbers, not important. The only ones that are really, really important, at least immediately, are Alchemy being 100, Spellcraft being 50 at the lowest, and Runework being 64, which is also pretty low. Like, this is going to be like, oh, her main interest, the thing that's going to cause her the most problems, and something that's going to be vaguely plot related for a little while. Looked over her mom's expression, her mouth moving slightly, doing the math. Is it enough? I needed a total of at least 675. Bit my lip and ran the numbers quietly as well. I did it! I breathed. I did it! And that is our first episode. And yeah, I remember when I wrote the first version of this back in April, I think. Pretty sure it was April. And this looked completely different back then. This was an entirely different, it was the same, point in the timeline, more or less, which is about a month before the main story begins, and kind of serves the same narrative purpose. But my problem with the first version of this is that I didn't think there was enough of Seraphina's personality and internal life going on. So I completely reworked this in the second episode to include more of that. And plus, the first 2 episodes before didn't have any fantasy elements at all in it. There was no magic, no teleportation, no scrolls, no headache, none of that. And I was like, this fantasy series needs more fantasy in it in the beginning. I know it's going to be intentionally being a very slow-paced story, but somebody should be casting a spell in the first episode. Oh, onwards to episode 2. Episode 2, To Be Chosen. Mom was leaning forward and staring at me with narrow eyes. What? I asked. It's official now. Have you thought about which tower you want? I shrugged. Of course I had thought about it, but that didn't mean I had my heart set on any of them. She gave me a flat, unimpressed look. Which one do you think would suit me? Yeah, because, Lucinda worked there, so if anyone would have any insight onto how these towers work, she would. She let a slow exhale and tilted her head to the side, letting it rest on her hand. You'd be a terrible banshee. You're not serious enough. Ah, yes, because she was the image of seriousness. Our main character, ladies and gentlemen. Very sarcastic, but I love her all the same. And you'll note that Seraphina's internal thoughts is 20 to 30% of the story. You do okay in Basilisk. You'd be bored, though, she continued thoughtfully. Salamanders would drive you crazy. I shuddered at the thought of being surrounded by competitive hotheads. As much as the idea of you being a sylphid like me is charming, you'd have a hard time making friends there. I wondered if the horror of the idea of being surrounded by tiny versions of my mother showed on my face. I think it did because Mom started laughing. What about Kraken Tower? She let out a last puff of laughter. You do okay. Until you had a bad day and opened your mouth. And Krakens are judgy anyway. I don't think I'm social enough for Pixie or Pegasus. She shook her head slowly. Definitely not, she started frowning. I don't think Kelpie would work either. It'd give you a hard time if any of them learned that your father is human. Well, this was troublesome. Meaning I'm a bad fit for all of the towers. Unless you've been paying attention and note that, they've only talked about 8, but there's gonna be 9. Mom switched from worried to an attempt at reassuring. Well, being chosen by a tower can sometimes produce shocking results. You might both just be missing something. Are you shocked when Sophie chose you? Yes. Hi, Spin. We're having story time. Are you shocked when Sophie chose you? Yes, actually. For years I was convinced I was going to be a Pegasus. I'd gotten blue streamers from my room and everything. But the yellow suited me better. What about Dragon Tower? I asked after a few seconds of thought. There was a soft and quiet worry in the back of my mind. Mom blinked a few times. It's still closed, but it might choose you. That does happen. It's incredibly rare, even way back when it was open. Yes, lots of secrets. Dun dun dun. And yes, from the moment your Dragon Tower is brought up, you're meant to be like, that's suspicious. I wonder if we're going to be spending time there. Did it only take people rejected by all the other towers? Aw, Seraphina's worried. But that would be something, if you were. You want to know something? She smirked in a conspiratorial manner, like she was preparing to share some horrific secret. My family has a very long history with that tower. I sighed. You've always told me the Towers of Nine was in our blood. It is, very much so. Ever since it opened 2,000 years ago, our family has attended it. And the tower most of them were chosen by was Dragon Tower. Mother dearest is keeping secrets. Really, she rarely spoke about the details of her family. I had never met any of Mom's relatives. I doubted even Dad had. Your great-grandfather was the first of us to not end up there. He was a Kelpie instead. Though that was also after it closed. But I think it worked out. That's how we met my grandmother. Mom had a soft smile on her lips. She was more excited than he was about me being a Sophie. She baked a cake and decorated it with so many yellow flowers. Which was for the best because Mom could not bake for the life of her. It took me being married to your father to actually learn to be functional in a kitchen. Aw, that sounds adorable. I wonder if we're ever going to be meeting any of these people. Baking is like chemistry, I quoted. She laughed. Yeah, something like that. Ram's always compared it to alchemy, though. How did your mother react to you being a sylphid? She was less surprised than I was. She just nodded at me when I told her. She already knew and was just waiting for me to figure it out on my own. But that's a Kraken for you. So, Lucinda's mother's a Kraken. We should probably be paying attention to any Krakens that we see. I chuckled. You're going to do great. I know it. You ready to go home? I nodded. How'd it go? Dad asked as we appeared in the living room. Your daughter got 100 on alchemy, Mom announced. That's my girl. More importantly, I said with a wide grin, I did it. My father, face as stony as ever, clapped slowly but sincerely. Mom sighed happily. I'm going to have to go shopping for the school year. You don't know what classes you're taking until you get there? Do you want to take advanced classes? We'll have to prepare for the placement tests if you do. Mom spoke in a rushed frenzy. Was she even breathing? Breathe, Lucinda, Dad said. Victor, this is very important. So, yeah, now that we've actually seen their names, Victor's name is actually kind of funny because I chose Victor because he's a chemistry professor by trade. That is his actual, like, job. I was like, I need a name for this guy who's interested in science, but is just a little bit quirky and weird. Because, I mean, he married a witch. This is 2. This is chapter 2. So I was like, what's a good name for a slightly eccentric scientist man? And I was like, I gotta name him Victor. It's okay, Spin. That's what VODs are for. You haven't missed that much. It's okay, you haven't missed any of the weird parts yet. If we were starting in the middle of chapter 5, then you would be in trouble, but it's okay. Also, since we're talking about names. Yeah, kind of. That was kind of the reference I was going for, Nat. Because, I mean, I think it takes a special kind of man to be like, oh, the girl I'm dating is a witch. I'm gonna marry this one. I mean, look at Lucinda. That's not something. And also, since we're talking about names, the last name was also kind of interesting to choose because because Seraphina's name was an instant no thought choice, but Stuart was something that I put a bit of thought into because I wanted a name that intentionally sounded relatively normal. Like, you might know a Stuart in your day-to-day life. A very common human last name that is not that strange. Like, you wouldn't look twice at a Stuart. Which is the whole point. Is that, you know, human family fairly normal. Until Lucinda came in and changed everything, for Victor at least. I'm gonna need a haircut, I told them both. Mom's eyes sparkled with mirth. Dad nodded. It's a boarding school. You'll be sharing a bathroom. Yep. Shorter hair will mean less hassle. At least Dad was helping focus on the practical. Well, we can still get you decorations. You'll be living in that room for 5 years. You'll want to make it home as soon as possible. You think they'll allow rock growing kits? I asked her. Wasn't fully sure what the policies on bringing objects from home were. Mom rolled her eyes. Non-magical objects are almost universally allowed, with a handful of exceptions. Yeah, they can bring, you know, gemstones, rocks, crystal balls, tarot cards. Can't bring things like knives, though. Which, I mean, understandable. Dad was trying and failing to hide a smile. It was his fault I was like this. It was miles better than being like Mom. How did anyone have the energy to be so excited all the time? Just looking at her was exhausting sometimes. Let out a loud yawn. 4 hours of testing was catching up to me. 4 weeks after the entrance exam, I stood in my room for what would be the last time for several weeks. I wouldn't be home until mid-December for the 3-week winter break we got. The stuff was already packed. I'd finished 2 days ago. A rock collection glittered at me, sparkling in the streams of sunlight coming in through the blinds. My babies! I was going to miss them. I'd have to make them siblings as they got settled in. My fingers traced over the blue and white clusters, and I let out a soft sigh. Are you ready to go? Mom asked me from the doorway. We still have a couple of minutes if you need them. And yes, the colors of the crystals do matter a little bit. That's me kind of making an internal reference, and now I won't explain it. But do pay attention to the color of objects. I can't believe you were... I shook my head. Let's do this. I can't believe you're wearing that for orientation, Mom commented when she saw the shirt I was wearing. I picked it out of my closet a week ago. I gave her a grin. What's wrong with it? No one's gonna know what it is, and if there's anyone who does, maybe I could make a friend. That was my excuse, and I was sticking to it. The shirt in question had the logo for my favorite band over a black background. A neon bouquet of roses, surrounded by gray metal chains. Mom didn't look fully convinced. Just be careful. Your father may not be anything to be ashamed of. That doesn't mean you should go around advertising it either. Definitely lots of controversy for the whole Victor being human thing. I rolled my eyes. I know, it'll be fine. Besides, I blend into the background too much. No one notices me here. I don't see how a fancy boarding school is going to change that. She did not look pleased. Now, we should probably get going. The last thing I want is to be late before classes even start. The Towers of Night School for Magic Study and Practice was both exactly what I had been expecting and not at all what I expected at the same time. Which sounds like it shouldn't be possible, but I swear that makes sense. I swear it does. I'd expected large iron gates and a wide, ruler straight cobblestone walkway leading upwards towards a castle. But all of Mom's stories hadn't prepared me for how massive it was. At least 7 stories tall at its highest point, nearly 1,000 feet on each of its 9 sides, all punctuated by one of the titular towers. From the front I could see Pixie Tower. Its telltale spinning gave it away. At the other end of the same wall loomed a tower with a swirling thunderstorm that blocked the top floors from view. Pegasus Tower. I couldn't see the other towers from my current vantage point. Which one would choose me? The daughter of a college chemistry professor and a witch who left all of this behind to be with her family. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and completely out of my hands now. And that's the end of episode 2. Yeah. In the initial draft for this episode, I can talk. We weren't going to get any talk about what any of the characteristics of the towers or how Seraphina was going to fit into any of them. And I was like, this is really important. Somebody should probably be bringing those up sooner. And I was like, well, it kind of has to be the mom because she's the one with experience in all of this. Victor has no idea what's going on other than there's school. Daughter wants to go to school. I'm going to help her as best I can, which isn't much. Admittedly, more like just sitting on the sidelines being like, good luck. So yeah. And again, if any of you have any questions or comments of your own or things you would like to know, feel free. And also, I have something fun to show you that I set up last night. Assuming I can get this to work. If one of you could type !book into chat, that would be really helpful. Because I did a thing and I want to show you. In front of the iron gate was a woman. In front of the iron gate was a woman. She stood tall and straight with her hands behind her back, wearing a stern expression. Her hair was pulled back into a bun without a single strand of hair out of place. Her green eyes scanned the crowd of roughly 150 fellow teenagers. Thanks, Spin! Every single one of you passed the entrance exam. From this point on, whether you passed by a single point or 200 won't matter. Where you came from won't matter. Here at the Towers of Nine, you'll be stuck with the people around you for the next 5 years. My name, for those of you who bothered to read the packets we sent, will know, is Professor Vivian Hearth. I won't be teaching any of you yet, as I teach Elite and Master Spellcrafts. I'm also head of security and discipline, meaning I'm one of the few people who can suspend or expel you on the spot. You do not want to end up in my office, and I do not care for excuses, and I do not hesitate. Are we clear? And here we are introduced to Vivian Hearth, my favorite professor, admittedly, in this school, and one that is very important, which is why we're meeting her first. Good rule of thumb: if they have a line of dialogue these first 5 episodes, they are fairly important, and we will be seeing a lot of them. That's an interesting idea, Nikki, but Vivian's like 67, just FYI. And also, I kind of imagine Catherine Hahn would be another character's mother. One we're gonna be meeting here in a few paragraphs, I think. No, actually, she's later. A while. We're gonna be meeting her later this episode, though. I joined the chorus of, "Yes, ma'am." Yes! That's the whole point. That's why I wanted to do this. The whole point of me figuring out the streaming thing was I wanted a platform so I could just sit with a mic and just rave about the thing that I wrote and all the lore and all the fun bits. That was the whole point of doing this. This is the contest. This is the content I wanted to make really badly, but I didn't have any idea how to do it. So this is the solution I came up with. Oh, goodness. Good. Now all of you will follow me. I'm sure you all want to be chosen by your towers as soon as possible. I lingered in the back of the crowd as we walked. Typo. As we marched towards the massive stone compound. I'm no interest in seeing the new Professor Strange movie, by the way. Thank you, Nat. In the days after the entrance exam, I had received maps of the school, along with general information about most of the staff. Between that and Mom's stories, I had a general idea of where most things were in relation to each other. The school had a simple layout, considering it was a castle that 5 founders placed the school right on top of. Professor Hart started speaking again as we stepped into the giant doorway, which consisted of 2 massive wooden doors, held together by large bands of iron that stood open in silent greeting. This castle has stood for nearly 2,000 years. Turning the best and brightest of each generation into the most productive members of magical society. You will be no exception. I think she always acts like she has a stick up her. A boy with reddish-brown hair whispered to me from nearby. Those of you who choose not to take this seriously may turn around and go back out those gates. I will be happy to write the letters to explain to your parents. And this is one of the things I love about Vivian. She doesn't take nonsense from anybody. And yes, this boy is important. Remember him. Holy heck, Mom worked with this woman? No wonder she never talked about her. There's no way they got along. Interesting. Wonder if Mom talked about any of her other co-workers. The light shadow that was building silenced. Do not mess with Vivian Hearth. Noted. Very important lesson. Seraphine is absolutely right. I was already dreading the day I would have to take her class. Spellcraft was a vital part of the curriculum here. A core class that had to be taken by all students every year. My heart was pounding and my hands shook. Had this been a mistake? No. Relax. It would be years from now. Elite and Master Spellcraft were the 5th year courses. I had more immediate concerns, like whether my tower mates would hate me. Aw, she's nervous. Some of you might be wondering at this point why we call it being chosen by a tower. Yeah, because verbiage is important. That me using the word chosen is not an accident. And pay attention. When the school was founded and the towers were built, each was enchanted with some complex and unique magic. This allows it to know who you really are, and it will select students that will thrive within its walls. So you'd best play nice with your tower mates. After all, being chosen by one of our towers is an honor and a privilege. One best shared with the other like-minded people whose company you will share. Interesting. Yeah. The towers are just like, I want this one, and this one, and this one. And yeah. And which one was going to choose me? We walked together in a short hallway. It forced us to stand in rough rows of about 10 across. Professor Hart stood in front of another wooden door. This one was closed and had wood carvings of 9 creatures. A pixie, a pegasus, a salamander, a sylphid, a basilisk, a banshee, a kraken, a kelpie, and at the very top was a dragon. 9 creatures, 9 towers, and a choice I had no say in. And yes, you're supposed to be like, I wonder if the order there is important. It is. The order is a little bit important, and you'll also notice that each of the towers is in isn't a pair, except for a dragon that's kind of weirdo all on its own. Part of me was relieved. This was a moment that would affect the next 5 years and possibly the rest of my life. The idea of choosing on my own was enough to fill me with enough terror to overwhelm any nervousness of having such a pivotal decision out of my hands. Once you've been chosen, the student representatives of each tower will take you to your new home so that you may get accommodated and settled in before the grand welcoming. Representatives are to be given respect equal to what you would give a professor. Nope, not that we're told or aware of. Nope. Everybody gets chosen by one of them. They're here to assist you for this week before classes begin properly. Now, I will open this door and you will all sit down in an orderly fashion at the tables inside, and your time here at the Towers of Nine can begin. She lifted her right hand to be at equal level to her ear and snapped loudly. The sound pierced the air and echoed in the halls. A wave of purple energy shot through the air like a harmless shockwave. The doors behind her burst open with a resounding thud. It took a few minutes for the dozens of students ahead of us to shuffle into the room. But I'll tell you this, Nikki. If that situation did happen and someone wasn't chosen by a tower, there is a plan B if something goes wrong with initial tower choosing, which we're gonna see here later. It took a few minutes for the dozens of students ahead of us to shuffle into the room. Psst. The boy with the reddish-brown hair from before spoke a whisper in my ear. What tower are you hoping for? Whichever one isn't full of pricks, I think, I whispered back softly. Does it really matter which one? He laughed quietly. Yeah, I hear that. My fingers across for salamander. Good luck, I whispered back. The way eventually cleared enough for us to walk in. Wrong button. The room was massive, which, considering it was built to sit over 1,000 students, was to be expected. But I was confused by both the configuration and number of representatives standing in the back. Before us were 8 massive tables, each with a representative in full uniform standing at attention at the far end of the room. I wasn't shocked that Dragon Tower didn't have a representative. It had been closed for over a century. The door was sealed and unable to be opened by anyone. I tried to imagine myself in one of the colors worn by the students standing at attention in the back of the room. I still couldn't see any of them suited me. I sat down at the 5th table from the left, close to the center of the room and away from everyone else. Hands trembled slightly as the others shifted around. Some sitting in groups like old friends. It was loud. Too loud. That's going to be a reoccurring theme. I looked down at the table I was sitting at. I traced the lines of the wood with a finger. At least until a girl with silver hair and very intricate personnel braids and a pastel pink sweater sat in front of me. Her hands folded themselves neatly on the table. She had gray, almost blue skin and a very disinterested look on her face. This is the character who I think whose mother... This is the character whose mother would probably be best played by Catherine Hahn, Nikki. My name is Celica Felgraces. What's yours? Seraphina Stewart. Nice to meet you, Alfred. I haven't heard of the Stewarts. Where are you from? Massachusetts? I gave her my best friendly smile. It's hard to keep to ourselves. She tilted her head and narrowed her eyes. Nice shirt, she said curtly. Was she mad at me? Did I say something wrong? Is something up with the sound spin? We've been having some trouble with it. If you're hearing something other than my voice, there's nothing I can do about it. I shrugged. Thanks. Nice sweater? I tried. Could I sound more awkward? She frowned. I don't suppose you'd mind if I sit here while we get chosen by our towers. I shook my head. Not at all. I wasn't saving the seat for anybody or anything, and I can't tell you where to sit. Her frown vanished at least, but her face went back to cold disinterest. Part of me prayed I didn't end up in her tower. Yeah. Serafina is not very good with loud noises and lots of people. So hearing her complain about the things and people being too loud is going to be like a thing. A few awkward moments passed until the last student was sitting down. There was a loud whistling noise from somewhere behind me. I nearly jumped at the sound. A puff of green smoke and a blank sheet of paper and a white globe appeared in front of every student. Ah! Wrong button! Wrong button! She might be. I'm not going to be arrogant enough to say that for sure she is. But, I do think that it's a very high probability. I'm kind of used to interacting with people who are on some kind of spectrum, and I'm not entirely convinced I'm not slightly neurodivergent myself. But, yeah. I'm not comfortable saying if she's 100% for sure or not. But if you are and you look at Seraphine and be like, yep, I've been there. That's, yeah. I fiddled with mine a little while Celica Felgraces set hers down neatly next to the paper. Please tell me I didn't somehow have a mortal enemy before going to my first class. I don't need the stress. So, this first interaction with Celica was initially going to be quite a bit different. Well, similar in tone, but let me take because I have the rough draft sitting here. She was initially going to mention something that I had to cut and change. She was initially going to comment that Seraphina looked familiar to her. But I decided to change that as I altered that particular plot point a little bit. And, yeah. Seraphina was going to talk about her mom a little bit with Celica in here, but I changed that. I don't know. Just fun facts. I looked down at the paper, which was still completely blank until Professor Vivian Hart's voice came from the door. In a moment, instructions will appear on the paper in front of you. Follow them carefully and answer each question honestly. Nothing you put down will affect your test scores or grades. The only thing you're learning is which tower you will belong to. Do not stress. In truth, these won't even be read by anyone. Begin. Ink filled the paper. A swirling mess of letters and shapes gave me a bit of a headache to look at. Luckily, it settled down. The top of the page read, look closely at the shape below. Tell us what you see. It was an ink plot test. Okay. In truth, I didn't see much of anything. The messy blob of ink just looked like someone dropped a half-full equal onto it. There was a line at the bottom for my answer. I stared at the inky, asymmetrical mess on the page. My mind tried to make it conjure something, anything. Nothing came to mind. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. When I opened them, I still saw a black smudge on a piece of paper. But if these weren't going to be read by anyone anyway... I wrote ink mess on the line. Well, the magic personality test seemed to think it was an acceptable answer. The page rearranged itself again. I closed my eyes to fend off the headache this thing was giving me. I opened them to find 4 multiple choice questions. And yes, the fact that Seraphine is getting a headache during this is important. The first, which class are you most looking forward to? The options were alchemy, brewing, spellcraft, monster husbandry. I grinned to myself as I circled alchemy, remembering my father laughing when I told him I would be taking it. It was the closest I would ever get to being able to take a chemistry class, like the ones he taught for the university. The second, which class are you least looking forward to? The options repeated themselves in the same order. I sighed and chose to be honest. Those were the instructions. I circled spellcraft with a cringe. My class is going to be my biggest hurdle here. But maybe, just maybe, I would finally be able to cast spells. And we get a confirmation that Seraphina cannot cast. It's been hinted at, but now she's finally said it outright. Which also probably explains why she was at human school before all of this. You know, you can't really blame her parents for that decision. The third, which founder do you relate to the most? The options: Melkart the Tyrant, Loris the Merciful, Delk the Wild One, Holferna the Honest, and Jantrus the Feared. I bit my lip and thought about it. I knew the basic histories of the founders. My mother had worked here, after all. And, of course, she talked about this place most of my childhood. But as far as relating, I could only choose one. I circled Jantrus the Feared. How could I not? He was the only one who had one human parent and one magical one. The son of a wizard and his human bride, who vowed revenge on the world after a lynch mob tore his family apart at a young age. Eventually, he'd chosen to assist in building a school on the promise that any child, no matter the origin, should they be worthy, could learn magic. It was likely the main reason I was even sitting here. I wonder if those names are going to appear later and be important. The answer to that question is yes. The last question. Which is your favorite color? Pink, blue, orange, yellow, brown, white, purple, green, red. And you'll note that this is in the same order as the creatures were on the door. That's the thing. I did that on purpose. Seriously? They were asking us which of the tower colors was our favorites. I shrugged again. I tapped the tip of the quill on the page a few times and settled on circling green. I'm sure that will be terribly ironic in the future. I have anything interesting in my notes. I glanced up at the representative wearing the green uniform of Kelpie Tower. I couldn't see myself in it, but it was infinitely better than the garish abomination that was the shade of pink for Pixie Tower. I'd rather gouge my eyes out. The page scrambled and changed itself again. The headache was worse, sharp and unpleasant, but faded quickly once the new task settled in. Again, interesting that she gets headaches for these split seconds between questions that immediately go away. Like, that's not weird at all. In one sentence, tell us your name and reason for attending the school. The rest of the page was blank. I let out a deep sigh and started writing. My name is Seraphina Holly Stewart, and I chose to attend this school to learn how to be a witch. The page was blank for several very long seconds. I set the quill down nervously and my hands shook again. Now we wait, I spoke under my breath to myself. I closed my eyes and counted to 10 in my head. I opened them again when I was done. The page, which up until then had used plain black ink, was filled with color. 9 symbols, each creature in its color in full display looking back at me. I tried to discern how I was supposed to know which had chosen me. Then they started to shift and move around the page. One then moved to the center. The others encircled it, but gave it room as it grew. The red quickly dominated the page, and I smiled a little. The creature in the center moved as if to roar in approval. My tower was dragon. Thank you, Spid. Dun dun dun! Seraphina got picked by the closed tower. How was that? That's gonna be problems. Nothing but problems. How are we all feeling? That's fine. Yeah, this one is mostly unchanged from draft to this version. A few minor word changes. I think the biggest change is probably the conversation with Celica. That had to go a couple different iterations. But I'm happy with the one we've settled that we have here. And you can kind of see that these two are gonna not quite understand each other all that well as the story progresses. Because, yeah, we're gonna be seeing more of Celica. As anyone who's checked my playlist could probably guess. I'm glad you're having fun, Nat, because people like you are half the reason I wanted to make this content. because I was just like, there's so many things, right? And it all means something. Eventually. We're gonna get there. Episode 4, Open Sesame. And yes, I probably should be reading the chapter titles out loud, because they do mean something. And this is fun. I looked back at the representatives, as if trying to will the impossible and change the fact that I had done the unlikely and got by getting chosen by Dragon Tower. The pink for Pixie, the blue for Pegasus, the orange for Salamander, the yellow for Sylphid, the brown for Basilisk, the white for Banshee, purple for Kraken, and the green for Kelpie. And yes, I repeat these colors a couple of times just so that everybody knows what it all means. And these colors were intentionally picked for each of these towers. So it all means something. No one was wearing dragon red. Because of course not. Oh no, I voiced the worried thought out loud. No, I didn't want to stand out. What? Didn't get the tower you wanted? Celica asked me. Her voice had a sharp, taunting edge to it. I glanced up at her. Her sheet was completely blank. Mine still had the dragon tower on full display. I got chosen by Dragon Tower, I answered in a calm, deadpan voice. Her disinterest melted into a delighted grin. What? I held up my paper wordlessly. She laughed and leaned backwards. Sucks to be you. I set it down and shrugged at her. I'll probably have to talk to Professor Hearth. The strange glee on her face, the glint in the dark gray and yellow, and electric yellow of her heterochromatic eyes, made me nervous. It was everything that I didn't want. Color sprung itself onto Celica's page. I stared down at mine and wondering what I was supposed to do now. I put my head on the table and fought back a groan of despair. A few moments passed before she nearly screeched, "Are you kidding me?" I looked up at her while keeping an even face. Her jaw slacked open. My eyes flashed to the paper. From my angle, I couldn't see much, but I could see the familiar red covering the paper. I burst out laughing. I was not alone in this mess. No one has been chosen by Dragon Tower in years. What is going on? She continued. I laughed harder. This is not funny. No, I said around my hysterics. No, it's not. This is absolutely terrible. I did mean that sincerely, but it's hard to not sound sarcastic when you're having nervous hysterics. Mom was going to have a field day when I told her about this. Dragon Tower, Celica was ranting. What? How? What? At least she was quieter about her freak out. We were starting to get looks from nearby students. Is something the matter, you two? Of course our nonsense got the attention of Professor Hearth. I, still shaking with laughter and trying to breathe, held up my sheet of paper for her to inspect. Celica was too busy staring off into the distance with her jaw on the floor. Oh dear, both of you. It happens, nothing to be worried about. A few more minutes and we'll get it all sorted out. By the way, if you think Vivian's checking on them because Seraphina's making noise, you aren't correct. There is another reason, but we're not going to be told what that is for a long time. So, have fun thinking about that. I placed my paper back on the table and reunited my forehead with the wood of the table. I took a few deep breaths to calm myself and then sat back up normally. Celica seemed to have been snapped back to the real world. The rules say that no tower will have less than 5 students in it, so will likely be assigned different towers. She was talking to mostly to herself. I doubted she was saying it for my benefit. Well, nothing to do about it except sit here and wait. Right. Celica nodded numbly. Right. This will get sorted out. We might even choose our own tower. I shrugged again. Possibly. Celica scoffed. Can you please react like a normal person, or am I stuck with a weirdo tower mate? Again, this relationship's gonna be contentious. I love them. Might still be in shock at actually being here. There had to be a protocol, a precedent for what to do in this scenario. I was not the first student this happened to. Ugh, this sucks, she groaned. I was hoping for Sylphic Tower. Probably gonna get stuck in the boring ones. I'm sure it'll be fine. I was aiming for company, but her raised eyebrow and accompanying eye roll told me I didn't succeed. Yes, Seraphina's family has a lot of explaining to do. Mother Dearest has a lot to answer for. All right. All of you are done now. Professor Hart spoke loudly to the room. Representatives, line up your new first-year students. The rest simply follow the guidance of the representative matching the color you just received. If your color does not have a representative, please speak with me on the other side of the room. All of you keep those papers for the time being. You will need them. Oh, good! Not awkward at all! Please don't be a big deal, I quietly wished as I got up to walk in the opposite direction from 99% of the room. By the time Celica and I broke out of the crowd, I'd noticed 3 other students heading for the professor. Dun dun dun, and that makes 5. The boy with the reddish-brown hair, I told you he'd be important. A boy with short but very neat black hair, and a third boy with a long ponytail of light brown hair with a streak of green. All 5 of us arrived about the same time, papers in hand. Ah, yay, shenanigans! Professor Hart's face went a shade paler. Besides that, she stayed composed. That's more of you than I expected. In any case, the 5 of you are to follow me to the headmaster's office. We'll get this sorted out. The 5 of us shared looks. It might have just been me, but there was a nervous energy that seemed to spark between the 5 of us. Somehow, being in a small group was more comforting than just being Celica. Professor Hart was quick to soothe. None of you are in trouble, but with 5 of you this might get complicated, and we'd rather you all be in the same place since none of you know your way around yet. That made partial sense to me. And really, what were our options at that point? She turned around and started swiftly walking in a direction. We all hurried to follow her. Dragons! 5 of them! All in the same year! 10 years without a single one, and then 5, all at once! Vivian Hart muttered to herself in a quiet, trembling voice. I might not have heard it if the hallways weren't empty. She continued, Hecate, help me. Delica's going to have a field day. We all exchanged somewhat confused looks. Oh good! I wasn't the only one worried and not thrilled with this development. Yay! We finally stopped in front of an open doorway. A plaque above read, Headmaster Theodore Pan. Yes, the last name was intentional, and yes, it is a reference to Peter Pan. Hopefully it won't end as badly as the original version of that story. And if you don't know the original version of Peter Pan's story, let's just say the Disney version is heavily censored by comparison and chilled out. Vivian, you're back early. A younger-looking man, probably in his 40s, noticed us and gave Professor Hart a raised eyebrow. Please tell me you're not about to expel these students. You always say you will, but you've never followed through with Delic. These 5 first years were all chosen by Dragon Tower. Professor Hart explained in a tense voice. Her posture grew impossibly straighter. Curious. His eyes boggled. Curious. Very curious. Headmaster Pan is going to be very interested. Mind if I come with? You can watch them while we talk. No unaccompanied first years until classes start, Professor Hart told him. Very exciting, he grinned at us. My nerves increased tenfold. The 2 adults led us past the doorway into a smaller room where 12 armchairs circled a small fire burning in a pit at the center. Delic spoke. Why don't you lot all sit down? We can have a cozy chat while Vivian and Headmaster Pan figure out the next step. He sat down in a blue sky chair closest to the fire and waved an arm around the room. I sat in a teal green chair farthest from him, that the angle kept him in my direct line of sight. Celica sat in a purple chair next to the fire, posture as neat and proper as before. The boy with the long hair looked the wariest. I noticed his eyes were red. He sat down in a white chair close to the door. Yeah, Seraphina got her assignment to Dragon Tower first, and then about a minute later, Celica got hers. And I'll share this fun fact. Part of that is because each student had a slightly different looking personality test thing. Serafina's looked the way it did because that's what they kind of read her mind and said, oh, this is what you're expecting to see, so this is what you're gonna see, and then we'll make a decision. Celica's looked completely different. So Serafina just finished hers first. So that's fun. The boy, he sat down in a big chair close to the door. Salamander, hopeful, with the red hair, sat down in an orange chair close to Celica, on the other side of the fire from Delic. The last member of the makeshift group, the one with the neat black hair, sat down in a brown chair next to me. How are you so calm right now? He would. Yeah! Magic test can do whatever it wants. He whispered as he sat down. I'm not, I told him with a shaky laugh. I'm panicking. This is my panicked face. Impressive. I'll start simply. My name is Hansel Delic. I teach entry, beginners, and intermediate history here, as well as coach the Chaser team. Do any of you have questions? I will be happy to answer them. And yes, his first name is a reference to Hansel and Gretel. Hopefully nobody ends up in an oven. The long-haired one spoke. What's wrong with Dragon Tower? Oh, thank the gods someone else asked before I had to. Delic laughed. Nothing is wrong with it. It just hasn't had occupants in a century. The guy rolled his eyes. Yeah, we know, but why? Delic laughed again. Dragon Tower has always been very, very picky about who gets to reside within it. But we never wanted a student to feel isolated here. Being alone could hinder their education. So, in the early days of our great school... I mean, you know, not impossible, Nat. A rule was put in place that if a student's occupant across all 5 years was less than 5, then those students would be placed within other towers. How they're placed is up to the current headmaster. But there are 5 of us now, I said. The grin on Delic, which I was sure was supposed to be reassuring or comforting, got bigger. Yes, there are. For the first time in a century, Dragon Tower might be reopened for occupancy, which will make this the first time all 9 towers were occupied in a very, very long time. So the reason he's excited because he's just like, ooh, I'm a history teacher. This is potentially history in the making. I get to be on the ground floor of it. This is exciting. The kids are just like, I don't want this. Or at least Serafina's just like, no, I didn't sign up for this. No pressure or anything. Is that why the door was sealed? Because there weren't enough dragons present? The guy with the ponytail asked. Delic, still grinning, shook his head. No, the lock on the door has nothing to do with whether it is in use or not. One summer day, when there were 6 dragons that were due to return the next school year, the tower, which was undergoing regular maintenance and cleaning, closed its door and hasn't reopened it since. No one knows why. Dun dun dun! Also known as the same guy asking questions about Dragon Tower. That might be important. Oh, wonderful! That's not foreboding or anything. So are we getting reassigned or not? The same guy pressed. Alex grin faltered. Not sure. I guess that depends on whether or not we can get that door open. If not, I suppose you will get placed in different towers and continue your school years like this first day never happened. I wanted that option. I didn't want attention. I didn't want the spotlight. It's going to be fine, my neighbor said in a normal tone. You can relax. We're here. The hard part's over. What's your name? I swallowed before answering. I'm Serafina. What's yours? He had a small but relaxed smile on his face. It was much more calming than whatever Delic was doing. I'm Fethris Nightcall. He held out his hand for me to shake. Yes, everything is foreshadowing. I love foreshadowing. He moved himself so that he was facing me while in his chair. I shook his hand, adjusted myself to mirror his posture. I'm okay. This is just not how I wanted today to go. I don't know what's going on in it, but I don't like it. How do you feel about this? Ancient castles, mysteriously locked doors, and teachers who are just as bewildered as the students. Can't say I'm a fan either. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Yes, exactly. I watched enough fantasy movies to know where this is going. Not that anybody in this room knows what a movie is besides her. Aren't you a little curious, though? The salamander asked. I mean, clearly there's something in there. Doors don't just lock by themselves. And why bother locking a door unless you want to keep people out, or, his face twisted to a wicked, mischievous smile, something in. Right? Right? Foreshadowing is so much fun. Like what? Celica asked, her disinterested look giving way to curiosity as she leaned towards him. Like you said, pointing to Fethris, this is an ancient castle. You know how many people have come and gone through those gates. Any of them could have had something dangerous to hide. Salamander seemed thrilled with the attention he was getting. Also, yes, the colors of the chairs they're sitting in do mean something. I won't tell you what, though. Colors in general mean a lot in this series, so pay attention to colors. Like they let us sleep in there with a century-old evil locked inside, Longhorn scoffed. It's probably just haunted or something. The other towers all have their quirks. Pixie rotates constantly and there's an eternal rainstorm over Pegasus. Gethys' smile was wider. Why do you all sound like you want to sleep in a tower with an evil being inside of it? I demanded incredulously. Mostly because it does sound kind of fun. That just shrugged indifferently. I stared at him, dumbfounded. You are all insane! I told the room with a flat voice. What metric put me in the same tower as these weirdos? Seraphina. She is not prepared for any of this. The one with the ponytail gave me a big toothy grin. If we're insane, then what does that make you? The straight man to this clown show. Clearly, I deadpanned. We all laughed, and despite my nerves, I laughed too. Oh, look at them. They're getting along. Kind of. It's nice to see you all took my advice about being nice to your tower mates to heart. Professor Vivian Hart's voice cut through the room like a cold wind. We all froze. All eyes snapped to her. She let out a sigh. We haven't made a final decision just yet. Dalek, would you please escort them through a tour of the grounds while we deliberate? This is going to take longer than I thought. Now, I have to pause for a second. Look, I have a be right back screen. I will be back momentarily. So we can all take a quick break. Oh, you guys are ridiculous. And I'm back. I had to... Anyway, not important. Where were we? It's nice to see you all took my advice about being nice to your tower mates to heart. Professor Vivian Hart's voice cut through the room like a cold wind. We all froze. All eyes snapped to her. She let out a sigh. We haven't made a final decision just yet. Dalek, could you please escort them through the tour of the grounds while we deliberate? This is going to take longer than I thought. I would be thrilled to show these fine youngsters our wonderful school. Alex said with his grin still in place. The five of us shared a look as Vivian Hearth rolled her eyes. Do be careful not to be too enthusiastic. You don't want to frighten them. At least somebody can read a room. He looked at all of us. I'm sorry, I can get carried away. At least he had the decency to look vaguely ashamed. Alright, everyone make sure you still have your papers, and we can begin to get you settled into wherever you might end up. Professor Hearth sighed as Dalek stood up and gestured for us to do the same. She then went back where she came from, in the opposite direction of where he was directing us. At least we were back on some kind of track, closer to how today was supposed to go. It was more reassuring than anything else right now. Honestly, though, I probably would deserve it if I came back and my chat was just full of, like, emotes or something. Heaven knows I've caused enough of mischief of my own in your chat spin. Are you going to take us to Dragon Tower? The salamander asked as we guys exited out back out into the hallway. I really needed to get his and the other guy's name. This was getting fairly ridiculous. Alex's eyes sparkled. So eager! Should I kind of spirit in my class, and passing will be easy. Of course it will. It's not actually that far from where my classroom is located, so we won't even have to go out of our way. It'd be nice to see what all the fuss is about. Bethris walked next to me in the unorganized cluster behind Dalek. And yes, Dragon Tower being near history was intentional. I did that on purpose. There's a reason for that. I won't tell you what. Hee hee. I nodded. If this is our history teacher, maybe it won't be too boring, Ponytail muttered. Dalek made a strange scoff-like sound. He turned a corner and saw a much larger cluster of students. About 20, or at most 25, students were led by a boy in brown who looked about 18. He nodded at Dalek, but he looked a little confused at the five of us. Yeah, we won't get your name till much later, buddy. They'll give you a hint. This person in brown. Okay, bye, Spin. Funny that you show up just as the character who I named after you shows up for a little bit, for a brief little cameo. But bye. Wish you luck with whatever you're up to. He shrugged at him as we passed. Not like any of us had a proper answer for him anyway. Dalek stopped in front of a hallway leading towards the center of the castle. Down there and to the left is my classroom. It's labeled H1 in your maps and above the door. Further down the hallway, the more difficult the class. The same pattern works for every classroom section. Questions? Silence. Good. On to Dragon Tower. Two right turns past hallways that all seemed to be the same shape but had hints of color. We also passed the stone doors for Banshee and Sylphid Towers. At least I assume that's what they were, judging by the ghostly woman and dancing flowers in their respective doors. And here we are, Dragon Tower. Standing before us was a stone door with a beautifully detailed carving of a stone dragon, long and serpentine and embracing the doorway in a complete circle. The head rested upon the tail at the foot of the door. Well, go on. All the first years try and open it when they learn it's unopenable. Please. Dalek gestured towards the door. After a brief non-verbal exchange with Ponytail, Celica tried her hand first. She strutted confidently towards it, placed a hand on the knob shaped like an extended claw, almost as if it wanted to shake hands, and pulled on the door. Nothing. She huffed and turned back around. After her, Ponytail gave it a whirl. No luck. Salamander actually rolled up his sleeves and rubbed his hands together. I heard him faintly whisper something as he attempted to push the stone door, foregoing the knob altogether. Nope. Bethris, amused by this, went up and simply knocked. The stone door held its ground. Suppose you're all going to make me attempt this, aren't you? I sighed while looking around. Okay. I slowly walked towards the door, eyed it apprehensively, and decided to have a chuckle. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and without an ounce of irony, spoke in a clear, calm voice. Open sesame. Nothing. I turned around and started walking back towards the group. The looks from my audience ranged from Celica's confusion to Salamander chuckling. Yeah, most of them don't understand open sesame. the person she's referring to as Salamander does, for reasons, but nobody else does. I let out a sigh. I wasn't expecting that to work anyway. I took another step forward. Something behind me clicked. No, I said slowly, not believing that actually worked. All eyes went wide. They heard it too. I turned around slowly. The knob on the door had started spinning on its own. You have got to be kidding me, Salamander said. Really? Really? The door opened with a loud slam. Before any of us could react, something grabbed me. An invisible force of some kind pulled me into the tower. I stumbled forward and turned back around just in time to see the door slam shut. Oh no. Yeah. Yep, human references aren't understood by most people. So, this scene was one of the earliest scenes I knew I wanted to put in here, but the initial versions that I concepted for this scene looked way different. And so the changes in this had like ripple effects through everything else. Because in the initial version of this, Serafina was already in a different Tower's uniform, kind of walking through the halls late at night, when a group of Kelpie students, including Fethris, were kind of hanging out, and one of them decided to be kind of a jerk, and Serafina ends up getting either stumbling or getting pushed into the door of Dragon Tower, where it opens right as she hits it, and then seals her in. So, since all of them saw this happen now, this has had changes on other versions of different scenes, and we'll get to those as we get to those. Yeah, imagine a version of this where Serafina was almost entirely by herself where this happened, and almost nobody saw her get locked into Dragon Tower. As you can imagine, that shifted the tone a lot. And definitely shifted her interactions with certain characters and certain characters' interactions. So, yeah, that was fun. Let's see. Anything interesting in the rough draft? Since I have it here. Blah, blah, blah. What's this? Yeah, that was part of why I changed it. Is because I wanted to have as much of Serafina's personality up front and center as we could. And plus with the way everything else kind of panned out. Because I initially wasn't going to do like a written test for the personality, for the getting chosen by a tower thing. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it for a while. But once I figured that out and had everybody kind of get chosen all at once. Because in an initial version of this, they weren't going to know that there were 4 other dragons or who those other dragons were. But in this version, they all know who everybody is, more or less. And that's had some shift to the group dynamics, which I think were good shifts. I'm personally really happy with how certain character relationships are developing. But it is interesting to think about that what-if scenario and that alternate timeline where we did have those original versions of scenes. But yeah, Serafina's personality is wonderful. I'm really happy with how her personality has turned out. Because I was worried about it, because I've read a lot of fantasy myself. Big fantasy person, big anime fan. And it always kind of annoys me when the main character has about as much personality as a cardboard cutout. Going through this like magical world. Whereas So that was part of why I ended up writing Serafina this way, because she is not intended to be a self-insert protagonist who you're meant to live vicariously through. No, she's someone who's telling you this crazy story of this weird thing that's happening to her as it's going. I mean, because that's the first thing that occurred to me was Serafina's voice, and everything else is just kind of slotted in place around her. Yeah, her personality is a huge part of shaping the story to be what it is. Anyway, episode 5, Death Spiders! The most important episode of this story. My favorite episode of this first book, probably, and the inciting incident for the rest of the series. The events of this episode have catastrophic rippling effects on everything else. Everything's gonna link back to this moment. And I'm very excited for it. The first thing I did was try the doorknob. To my complete and utter lack of surprise, it wouldn't budge any more from this side than it had from the other one. I pounded on the door loudly with my fist. Yeah. In my way that I do this is character comes first, then setting, then plot, then setting, and then anything else that happens to arise is the combination. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Nikki. This is the spiders episode. It's not opening, I yelled, not sure if they could hear me. I pressed my ear to the door and heard what sounded like jumbled yelling and panic. I pounded on the door again. We're getting help. Stay put. That sounded like Bethra's. Stay put! I'm locked in! Where am I gonna go? I stepped back. And you can see Serafina kind of snapping just a little bit. You know, this is what happens when Serafina's temper starts to flare. This is not happening. This is not happening. I kicked the door once more out of a desired event. More out of a desired event than any delusion it would actually help at this point. Nice to have you back, Spin, and you're good. You should start running. A voice spoke behind me. Oh, hells no. I turned around to find myself face to face with a ghost. A girl in a red uniform. Her face was obscured and whole body transparent. She flickered with the pale blue light that emanated off of her. And this person is one of my favorite characters. And I'm sad we don't see more of her in the first book, but we couldn't because of situation. This character. Her. Those of you who know my troubles with certain playlists are probably like, oh yeah, this person. Who are you? I demanded, startled. Though perhaps what was the better question. She stared at me. You can see me, she gasped in shock. Later, looked down, away from me. Was she talking to herself? She glanced up at me. I still couldn't see her features clearly, and she added a layer of urgency to her voice. Run. You need to run. Run? Run where? I'm locked in! The door will open, eventually. But you have more immediate problems. I was about to ask what when I heard the hissing. Yeah, this person is very cool. Good luck. You're going to need it. And then she was gone. Out of the darkness, barely visible to me was the outline of massive gray spiders. Dozens of them, all slowly encroaching on my space. Some of them had their front legs reared up as they hissed loudly. Nope! So fun fact about these spiders. They do have an IRL, like, close relative. And basically they're related to a certain species of blue and gray tarantula. So if you want to know what these things kind of look like, there you go. And if you don't, because you don't want to look at pictures of spiders, which, hey, I don't blame you, then that's up to you. But yeah, I looked around for a place to go. I saw an opening and ran. There was a thud behind me, and the hissing just got louder. I tripped over something. I glanced back to see something covered in cobwebs and dust. I stood up and continued running as the spiders continued chasing. Nope, 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 I chanted to myself. I internally cursed my lack of spellcasting ability. Anything, literally anything, would be helpful right about now. Faint sunlight was feeding in from the dust-covered windows. Everything was a pale gray from the light and dust. Ghostly, ethereal, a little spooky. I'm sorry, Nikki. I'm sorry. And the next one probably isn't much better. Yeah, blue and gray. It would be more pleasant without the horde of angry, ravenous spiders. I passed the staircase in my mad dash to get away. At the top were, surprise, even more spiders. More leaped towards me, their massive size causing them to land behind me with a terrifying thud. Then I found myself staring at a window, a massive wall of glass with what might have once been a built-in bench with cushions, now degraded with age. Not helpful, I muttered to myself. I heard laughter behind me. It was a strange sound, as if dozens of voices played out of sync. I took off in a new direction, heading towards the other side of the staircase. The hissing just got louder and louder. I kept running, picking random directions and getting lumps of dust and webs stuck to my clothes. But I found myself staring back at the door. I ran to it and started banging on it harder and harder. My hands and arms hurt. Let me out! Let me out, you stupid tower! The stone didn't budge. There was silence from the other side. I wanted to cry. Something tugged on my leg with enough force to pull me to the ground. A sharp pain pierced my ankle and I looked to see a massive and fanged nightmare with its teeth in my skin. I kicked at it with my other leg. It didn't let go. I screamed. I placed my hand on the ground in an attempt to yank my leg free. The room burst into bright pink flames. Columns of searing heat shot up from the ground. The spider on my leg was turned to ash. The flames hit cobwebs and spread. The hissing grew to a deafening roar and then quieted. The ghost, the one from earlier, wearing red and glowing blue, was kneeling near me. Feyfire, she whispered. As the flames died down, all that remained was scattered pale ash. My body spasmed. My vision tunneled. I slumped against the door. Yeah, the spider scene. I fully expect this scene to be infamous. And yeah, I'm glad it turned out the way I wanted it to. But as you can imagine, this scene was also way different in different conceptions. The biggest hurdle, and minor spoiler alert for what I'm about to say, but the person, the ghost she meets here, is going to later be called Red by the other students. And her identity was one of the things that was the hardest to figure out what I was going to do with that. I mean, I know it now, and I knew it when I wrote her first lines of dialogue, but that piece of information shaped the rest of this story. So, yeah, that's important. This scene is super important, and I'm sorry that very critical plot moment is tied up with this whole spider nonsense, but I needed to do that because of some other mechanics. Because this is meant to heavily be implied be the first time Seraphina's life has ever been in danger like this, which is what caused some other things to happen. So yeah, this scene changed a lot, and this scene is gonna have lots of rippling effects later. When I awoke next, I was staring up at a clear glass ceiling. It was dark out, and the stars nearly infinite. Where? Right there, it was dry and scratchy. As I blinked into awareness, the aches all over my body made themselves known. Goodness! A portly woman with a mix of white, gray, and black hair exclaimed nearby. I wasn't expecting you to be awake for a few more hours. Gave us all a scare. What happened? I asked as I tried to sit up. She was having none of that and gently pushed me back down. You were attacked by a breed of highly venomous spiders. You were lucky we got to you quickly. She looked down at me with a soft expression in her green eyes. And not quickly enough, it would seem. Closed my eyes and my head hurt. How bad is it? Nothing you won't recover from, think Kate. But you will be in here for at least a few more days. The last thing you want to be doing is putting weight on that ankle of yours. Unfortunately, you will likely have a permanent scar from all of this. I can live with a scar, I whipped it off. At least it will have a cool story behind it. Locked in Dragon Tower with a bunch of dangerous spiders. Quite the harrowing tale for a first day. And ghosts. There are ghosts too, I told her, remembering the event now that the haze was clearing. How long was I out? A day and a half, dear. She sighed. You just get some more rest. Do you need anything? Water? Food? The thought of eating anything made me want to hurl. Water, please. Of course. A few seconds later, I heard the faint clicking of a glass nearby. Took several breaths and sat up carefully, mostly leaning against the wall to sit up, and I sipped the water slowly. My hands trembled. I cast a spell. I breathed into sips of water. I actually cast something. Because remember, Serafina didn't know she could cast spells. This is the first spell she's ever cast in her life, so this is a big deal. Looked down at my left hand. It looked the same as always, despite the tremors. My heart was pounding in my ears. Are you sure you're all right? The woman asked. I am. I'm just a little out of it, I think. Do you know what the plan is for my tower placement? I know the door opened, but I don't think it's in any condition to be used right now. Professor Vivian Hearth is on her way. She'll know what the plan is. Half the staff is in a frenzy. The possibility of Dragon Tower reopening has everyone buzzing. I groaned. It sounded like a mountain of attention. I wonder what Mom's gonna think about all this. I'm sure she's worried out of her mind by now. I have a calm mirror somewhere, the woman murmured. Would you like to try talking to her? It might help. Am I allowed? Yeah, first spell, woot! I couldn't remember the rules about using calm mirrors on campus. Of course, as long as you stay in that bed, that is. I nodded. She disappeared again, then reappeared with a small hand mirror in a silver frame. I took it with a grateful smile. Lucinda Stewart, I told the mirror. The glass glowed with a pale green light, and after a few seconds, the face of my mother appeared. Hi, Mom. Serafina! I wasn't expecting you to call me so soon. How are you? How's the school? What tower chose you? They hadn't told her yet? Oh boy. I glanced up at the healer, then looked down and took a deep breath. I've been busy. Busy? She huffed. How could you have been... Her tone shifted, and she frowned deeply. Serafina, my wonderful daughter, who I love very much, why are you in the healer wing? Before I tell you, please sit down and have Dad nearby. I don't like that tone. I know that tone. You learned it from me. What happened? Are you sitting down? Yes, Serafina, I'm sitting down. Now tell me what happened and start from the beginning. I did the thing and got chosen by a tower. Woots! Except it was Dragon Tower. Boo. Got chosen by Dragon, Mom said in quiet disbelief. Okay, continue. So me and the 4 other kids who got chosen by Dragon Tower get pulled aside by Professor Hearth. Do you know her? Mom blinked a few times and let out a breath. I do. She took us to Headmaster Pan's office. We didn't see him, but guess she didn't want us stuck in the hall while they tried to figure out what they want to do with us. Right. No one supervised first years. And she ended up handing us over to a Professor Delic. And then he... Shh! Spin, Nat, can somebody use the band hammer? I can't. And he showed us Dragon Tower because I guess he didn't have anything better to do. She nodded. I remember him. So the others tried the door, and I decided as a joke to try it as well. I went open sesame and everything. Got a couple of laughs, and we were ready to continue our tour. But then the door opened. Mom's eyes nearly popped out of her skull, and she covered her mouth with one hand. You opened Dragon Tower? Distantly I heard, what's wrong? Why are you yelling? From my father. Victor, get in here. Dad came into view behind Mom. Hi, Serafina. I waved. Hi, Dad. Your daughter opened a door that has been impenetrable by magic for over a century by saying open sesame. Mom informed him in a tone that was both impressed and terrified. I shrugged. At least she's having fun, he offered. I laughed. I wouldn't call what happened next fun. But okay. What happened next? Mom demanded. Something, don't ask me, I don't know. Pulled me inside and locked the door again. Mom let out a strangled sound. That side was full of death spiders. Massive, venomous, and very unhappy spiders, I told them. And ghosts! Mom stared at me, dumbfounded. Dad covered his face with his hand. Define massive, please. Like this big. I gestured with my hands to approximate the size. One bit me and pulled me to the ground. Mom vanished from sight and Dad's face became clear. He must have taken the mirror. And the ghosts? I only saw one, but I heard others. The one I saw told me to run right before the spiders attacked. There was a high-pitched whine from somewhere outside the mirror's view. But you're all right now, Dad pressed. I'm okay. I fell asleep and they got me to the healer. She has me on bed rest for now. I should be okay by the time class actually starts. Give me one reason not to pull you out of that school right now, Serafina. My mother's voice cried, still out of sight. Because I finally cast a spell! I exclaimed, excited and grinning. Dad, without a word, turned the mirror so I could see Mom laying on her back on the couch. Her eyes wide and mouth parted in a shocked gasp. You did? She asked softly. I did! I don't know how, but I made these pink flames appear, and they burned the spider's stash. Mom covered her eyes with her hands and let out a groan. Fine, but only because you've wanted this since you were a little girl. But I will have words with the head of security. Are you speaking with your parents? I just finished sending the incident report paperwork. Professor Vivian Harth said as she approached. Yes, ma'am. I didn't want them to worry more than they needed to. Is that her? Good. I will have words with her. I saw Mom narrow her eyes. Give me the mirror. Victor, sit here with me. You're her father and have every right to be part of this conversation. I looked between the professor and my parents and turned the mirror around. Lucinda, for the record, Dalek was not supposed to take them to Dragon Tower. He was supposed to show them where their classes were going to be. You, of all people, know how difficult it can be for decisions to be made around here. I didn't want them sitting in the headmaster's office while we argued back and forth. I thought a tour would be a better use of their time. Doesn't change the fact that my daughter was in danger and got hurt, Vivian. There was a sharp edge to Mom's voice that I hadn't heard her use before. Yeah, modding the first time is hard, but you get used to it. I also gave mod privileges to Nat, just in case. Because both of you because I trust both of your judgments. So, any comment like that or anything else that's iffy or anything else, just go for it. I'd rather not argue. Serafina Stewart is perfectly safe and will make a perfect recovery. Her injuries will not affect her ability to do anything. Don't worry, I'm not pulling her out. She's wanted this too much. And I know you. If you thought her staying there was going to put her in danger, you would send her home yourself. Vivian Harth sighed. Good. I'm glad we understand where we both stand on this issue. She is one of ours now, and I will treat her with the full extent of our school's protections and services. This will not happen again. And since it was deemed not anyone's fault, when she's recovered, it will be treated as if this incident never happened. Good! If she gets a strike over getting hurt, I'd pull her out. For a moment, a split second, I saw a fond smile across Professor Hart's face. I know. Can I ask something? I spoke softly. Professor Hart met my gaze. Go ahead, Miss Stewart. What about my tower placement? Dragon Tower didn't look habitable. I can't imagine it's anywhere near ready. What's the plan? She nodded. We expected it ourselves once you were here safely and reached the same conclusion. Currently, the consensus we've reached is to assign all of you towers for the potential to relocate later. When you're better, Pixie Tower representative Mr. Seth will help you settle in. Welcome to the Towers of Nine, Miss Stewart. Okay. Now, just gonna pop that out of existence. Yeah, and that was episode 5. The most important episode of this story. So many things have their groundwork laid right here. And some of those things I can't talk about. But some of the things make me very, very excited. Like the interaction between Lucinda and Vivian is just great. It's fantastic. And I highly recommend coming back and rereading it after you read. If we ever get to a certain part in the second arc. It's okay, you two. It's fine. Stuff happens. But yeah, spiders. And I have a mild confession to make. I wasn't initially going to put spiders in the initial version of this part of the story. Like, spiders were not going to be a thing. But I was like, we need some kind of dangerous thing. And as you may have guessed, I took a lot of cues from haunted ghost stories. I was like, yeah. Oh no, Seraphina's hatred of pink and being connected to Pixie Tower, not accidents. Also not an accident that her magic was pink. And this is happening. Like, none of that is an accident. It's all on purpose. Yeah, but that spider-free version involves Seraphina being locked in a tower with a bunch of ghosts overnight. So, I mean, you know, it kind of is what it is. I was like, it's a ghost story, so we need, like, cobwebs. Well, if it's gonna be filled with cobwebs, I might as well put spiders in it. And I also needed something to have Seraphina in significant danger and to get very significantly hurt. Like, that's a pretty big deal and had to happen for the rest of the story to make sense. So I'm sorry. Oh no, Seraphina's not upset at me about this anymore. She's upset at me about other things. There's a whole list of other reasons Seraphina is mad at me. I can't answer that question, Dad. I'm sorry. It's okay, Nikki. Oh yeah, secrets. Episode 6, A Pink Nightmare. Oh. And again, if any of you are starting to like have theories or ideas, feel free to talk about them. I can't promise I'll react to it or give you any kind of solid answer, but you're welcome to try. It would be 2 more days before I finally got to see Pixie Tower in person. I was following next to Gregory's set, dressed in the most garish shade of pink I had ever seen, and felt a pit in my stomach at the thought of me having to wear it in the very near future. It's just a theory! A book theory! He should have. I wish he had book theories. Seraphina's Spidey Girl now. Right? That's how that works? She got bit by a spider, now she has weird powers? Is that not how superheroes work? In an alternate universe, she's a vigilante or something. I don't know. Since you missed out on the placement tests, they've given you a schedule based on how you did on the entrance exams. Yeah, nope, I can't respond to that, Nat. I'm sorry. But don't worry about missing the grand tour. All of your classes should have at least one other fellow pixie in it, so just follow them for now. The others are excited to meet you. He had a big, dumb, cheery grin on his face that I didn't have the heart to return. I fought back a sigh. This has been one huge mess. I'm glad the worst is behind me. I'll tell you this, Nat. Half of that theory is true. I won't tell you which half. He laughed. That's the spirit. We'll be far better company than those spiders. And it would be loving having a big old tower with just the 5 of you. I don't think the idea that some people might prefer smaller groups ever occurred to him. That place must have been so scary. No one blames you for seeing things. I'm very sneaky. I've never in my life ever pretended to be anything other than a sneak and a troll. You see, right now, just looking at that spin, I want to try and do a Darth Vader impression, but I know I'm bad at it. Also, I'm congested. That would be a catastrophe. So, be free to imagine lines of dialogue like that. For whatever reason, no one had taken my tale of ghosts seriously. If this was a school for human teenagers, I might have understood that. But it wasn't. Everyone here practiced magic. They were studying it. Ghosts shouldn't be that far-fetched. Didn't see things, I muttered more to myself than to him. And peace and quiet wasn't that bad of a thing. Hopefully the people weren't as bad as the color scheme. He laughed, loud and obnoxious. He silently prayed to Hecate that he was not the benchmark for pixie behavior. It's okay. Pixies are the type to talk about you. Must have been rough. Locked in a dusty old tower with Aranaya in mid-falso. I didn't think I'd be handling it better. That's on my mistakes. Okay, so the name he just dropped there, basically a rough translation of that is false image spider. So that's fun. But most people will just call them Aranaya. At least I will. I don't think I'd be handling it better. Of course the spider that bit me was famous for making people see things. But I saw the students pre-envenomation. I know what I saw. I grit my teeth to hold back the arguments churning in my brain. Don't look so tense. You see, if that was a real theory spin, they would have been glowing too. But only Red was glowing. So Red's the only ghost. Don't look so tense, he teased with a grin. News happens quickly around here. Give it a week or two and everyone will forget all about your ghost story. His voice was full of the most obnoxious condescension I had ever heard in my life. The worst part, I don't think he was doing it on purpose. I let out a shaky, heaving breath. Part of me almost understood. No one else saw what I'd seen. Spider venom had hallucinogenic properties. I'd been distressed and scared. It's okay, Spin. It's a fun theory, though. It still made me furious to be so completely written off by everyone. I forced myself to let go of the tension. Maybe once class started, I would have better things to focus on. Your things are in your room already, as is your pixie uniform. On school days, you'll have to wear it until after dinner at 7. On Saturdays and Sundays, we don't have to wear it at all. At least I would have 2 more days of reprieve before donning the vomit-inducing nightmare he was wearing. And here we are, he shouted, despite standing all of 5 feet away. In a poor attempt to save my hearing, I leaned back as he continued to shout. Pixie Tower! The bestest, most awesomest tower of the 9. The door was made of stone, a lot like dragon towers. Only this one was surrounded by the forms of dozens of small pixies, all pointed towards the door. Gregory Sett, in his horrifically ugly pink uniform, sauntered up to the door while I stood where I was. The door opened and I got my first glimpse into Pixie Tower. Oh no. The uniform was a warning. The tower itself was much worse. Come on in and meet everyone. Was it too late to go back to the spider-infested haunted tower? In the simplest terms, Pixar Tower was a very polarizing tower. You either loved it, like the residents did, or you hated it, like I did. First thing I noticed was how pink it was. There was almost every shade of pink on the spectrum. From the floor, which was a very pale pastel wood with a bright rug around the center, to the walls, which had a 3-tone wallpaper with a pink oak leaf design, to the furniture, which was predominantly hot pink, to even the window, which was a multi-tone rose-tinted mural of an oak tree. And the actual tower was not the worst part. No, because there were 12 first-year Pixie students cheering and clapping with pink confetti raining down with seemingly no origin. I wanted to vomit. Violently. Yeah, Seraphina's a heavy metal fan. So her plus bright pink happy tower is just like, this is just going to be a recipe for bad times for her. I mean, I have fun writing it, but, you know. The leader of this travesty was a girl already decked out in the full uniform. She was somehow both walking towards me and jumping up and down. Oh no. Oh please no. Hi there! Her eyes literally sparkled when she took my hands in hers. I was too stunned by the sensory assault to protest. My name is Angelina Farsi. It's really nice to meet you. I blinked rapidly and opted for polite. I'm Seraphina Stewart. Nice to meet you too. She giggled and pulled me into the crowd and all but physically forced me into a chair. She sat down across from me on a pastel pink wooden coffee table, placed her hands under her head and gave me wide, bright blue eyes. Expectant. Tell us everything, a girl exclaimed. About what? I asked, still dazed and confused. Maybe I left a healer too early and should go back. Dragon Tower, Angelina clarified. I blinked some more. Okay, sure. Where would you like me to start? There were honest to God squeals of excitement from the girls and eager looks from the boys. I wanted to find a dark cave to hide in until all of this blew over. The beginning. How did you get the door to open? How did you know how to open the door? Angelina pressed. I know how to read. I wrote this. I know what I'm doing. I sighed and took a deep inhale. I didn't. I just let the others go first, and when nothing they did worked, I decided to try and have a laugh. I made a reference to an old story my father introduced me to. I was as shocked as everyone else when it actually worked. They were all staring at me, expectant and eager, like children or puppies. I relaxed a little and continued. After the door opened, by itself, mind you, something pulled me in. I'm not sure what. I shrugged at them. And once you were inside, the door closed itself behind me, slamming it shut on its own and locked me in. There were gasps. That's when I heard a voice. I turned around and saw a student. She was wearing a red uniform, like yours, but in dragon red. But she looked surprised to see me, and I could see through her, and she glowed blue. Gregory Sett was now leaning in, listening intently like my future classmates. Then she vanished. That's when the spiders started crawling out of the woodwork. How many were there? Angelina asked. So many. Dozens. It was pretty dark and dusty, so I couldn't tell you exactly how many. The small ones were like this big. I made a shape with my hand to demonstrate that they were the size of my hand. But the big ones were like this. I held my hands out about 1.5 feet apart to give them an idea. Eep! One of the girls clung to a boy, partially hid behind him. So I started running, but they chased me. I ended up running in a circle and found myself staring at the door again. It still wasn't opening. That's when I got bit. I wasn't comfortable telling them the details about the spell I cast. I wasn't sure why I felt the urge to blur the truth a little bit. I don't remember much after that. It was a little too hazy. The venom, probably. Angelina nodded. So cool. Not really, but hey, at least it can't get worse. And if the worst day of my school career is already behind me, then that has to be a good thing, right? Angelina gave a wistful sigh. Do you know if they'll reopen Dragon Tower? I have no idea. Professor Harth said that won't even be a discussion until they get it into a state fit for people to live in. And who knows how long that will take. The horror had faded for now. I wasn't sure if this was going to work out. I no longer felt the urge to jump out of the window. There was a knock nearby. How was everyone settling in? I heard the last-minute addition was finally free of Healer Seeley's care. I turned around towards the voice. It was Dalek. I gave him a flat, even look. Why was he here? Ah, I forgot to mention. Along with my teaching and coaching duties, I am also the Pixie Tower head. We are delighted to have you here with us, no matter if your stay is temporary or if you become a permanent member of our hollow. I ground my teeth in an effort to not say something unpleasant. I also have your schedule. He made a movement with his hands, a rapid twitch of multiple fingers my eyes couldn't follow. Then a sheet of paper popped into my lap. Thank you, Professor, I told him politely. I picked it up, but didn't look at it. I stood up and tried not to think about all the eyes following my movement. It was nice to meet all of you, but I'm a little tired and still kind of drowsy from the past few days. Can I get you in my room so I can rest for a bit? It wasn't untrue. I did feel exhausted, and there were too many people staring at me out here. Angelina, who had deflated a little, perked back up. Sure, come with me. She grabbed my hand and pulled me along. We went up a spiral staircase, past 2 floors and into a curved hallway that spiraled outwards. Most of the doors were decorated with all kinds of stickers and bright, sparkly things. She stopped in front of the one door that had no such thing. This one is yours. She opened the door and the room was as bad as the rest of the tower. Frills, pink and frilly. And that was my luggage at the foot of the bed. A dark brown suitcase that clashed with everything in the room, and a weathered green trunk that fit just as poorly. It was comforting. I'll come get you in a few hours for dinner. Don't forget to try on your uniform to make sure it fits. She waved enthusiastically and closed the door behind her. I let out a slow exhale and slumped back against the door. Okay, Serafina, you can get through this. This is not the worst thing that could have happened. What did Mom say about pixies? I thought out loud. Optimistic and endless energy. Class should be fine, and I'll just limit my time in the tower to mandatory things. I can do this. Poor thing. He's not handling this very well at all. Also note how she had an urge to not tell everything. She had a very deliberate urge to keep at least something secret. I wonder if that's going to be important. But even as I spoke, my mind flashed back to the dusty eeriness of Dragon Tower, student in red. What had it looked like before the death spiders and the century of neglect? I patted my face and stood up straight. I finally looked at my schedule. Breakfast at 7, then I had practical spellcraft at 8:30. History was at 10. Advanced alchemy, which was a pleasant surprise, at 11:30. Lunch started at 1. At 2:30, I had basics on monsters. From 4 to 6, I had a free study period and dinner at 6. Okay, that wasn't a bad schedule. I wasn't expecting to take any advanced courses, but alchemy promised to be an interesting subject. Though really, when a chemistry professor or a witch decided to have a baby, that baby liking alchemy was an outcome anyone could have anticipated. I can do this, I repeated to myself. Though I actually meant it, as opposed to trying to blindly convince myself that this is going to be okay. Nothing can stop me now. Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm not entirely sure that's true. But it's okay. Yeah. Angelina's fun. And yes, her and Serafina's names are meant to be playing off of each other. And her last name is a big hint as to her main ability that she has that she's been training herself with. No, I won't tell you what that is yet. Episode 7. Morning Classes. Monday morning came with a bright light in the window. I put on my uniform piece by piece as I kept checking my reflection in the full-body mirror. Black slacks, a white undershirt with mid-length sleeves, a black vest. There was a tie, but it was optional for girls and it was that hideous shade of pink, so I opted out. There were fingerless gloves that went up to my elbow and ended just below my knuckles. Black with pink trim. They were optional too, but I liked them. And lastly, the thing that started my nightmares almost as much as the spiders, a bright pink overcoat that ended above my ankles and had a hood that we were required to have off when indoors. The sleeves of the coat were extra wide at the wrist and flopped about with any movement. It didn't suit me. I checked my reflection again, but the eye-melting color wasn't changing. I let out a defeated sigh. First day. It's tough to show up. Yes, her hating pink is a running gag for this entire first book. And I'm not sorry. So anyone who's like whose favorite color is pink, I'm sorry. But also, like, I'm not sorry. I stepped out into the spiral hallway and down the staircase with the rest of the horde of bright pink. Since the rest of the students had arrived, the total occupancy of the tower was up to nearly 70. And they were all enthusiastic and happy and cheery, and I was a coward who barely left my room. Also, they were all morning people. I was not. Angelina was at the door, jumping up and waving to get my attention. Serafina! It was too early. Good morning, Angelina. I greeted flatly. She giggled, looped her arm around me, and pulled me into the crowd. Are you excited for class? Which one do you think will be your favorite? Don't worry, no one's talking about your accident anymore. I hope we actually get to see a creature in monsters. Did she even breathe? One at a time. Please. Her eyes twinkled with excitement. I'm excited for advanced alchemy. Aw, she was disappointed. I got stuck in basic brewing. I don't think anyone else has it either. Look, all by yourself. Thank the gods. I'll manage, I'll reassure her while repressing the urge to roll my eyes. She was thankfully content to chatter about what she was hoping we were going to cover in Basics on Monsters. I interjected with the occasional affirmation so she would know I was listening. The tables from that disaster of a first day were filling up with students. Banners were placed at the other side of the room, black with the tower symbols and outlines around them in their colors. I let Angelina manhandle me to a seat at the pixie table. After we sat down, a Pegasus I vaguely recognized as another first year sat down at the table and peered down at me. The sky blue coat blocked most of my vision. Aren't you that girl that nearly died? He asked. I gave Angelina an even, tired, and flat look. She giggled. Traitor. That's one way of putting it, I responded. What's up? He smirked at me in a way that made me want to hit him. I heard you tripped on spider venom and saw ghosts. I sighed and pinched the bridge of my nose. Angelina gave me a worried look. Then I looked this person dead in the eye, and I heard that Pegasuses were airheaded gossips who don't know what they're talking about. It was barely 7 in the morning, and my well of patience had officially run dry. His smirk faltered. One of his tower mates at the table next to ours laughed loudly. Angelina was giving me a scandalized look. If he wants polite, he has to be polite first. And I need something to drink if I am to be patient with people. I told her flatly, while not looking at the blue robe next to me. One of the older Pegasus students grabbed him by the collar and pulled him back to the table. The other pixies were giving me stares. I shrugged at the table. Yeah, you see, Serafina, fitting right on in with pixie culture. I'm sure this is not going to just have clashes until she leaves. But, you know, it is what it is. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, the spellgraph professor greeted. The classroom was like a curved amphitheater. Professor James Telvis was standing on what could pass for a stage, while me and the other 50 students curved around him in 5 rows. This class had a mix of Pegasus, Pixie, and Sylphid all scattered about. The Pixies were mostly sitting in the front row, the 20 or so Sylphid students took up the middle 2 rows, and I was in the back with the majority of the Pegasus students. Except one who had a familiar ponytail with a green streak in it. Hey, look, he's back. In this class, I will be teaching you the simple versions of the most common spells. We'll spend 2 weeks on a spell and then a test at the end on how to cast it. Due to some regulatory safety rules, I cannot require casting of the spells for passing. Pay attention to the lectures, pass the test, and you'll do good in this class. Any questions? A girl in Sylphid yellow raised her hand. Yes, miss. I'm Jackie Heller. You said casting isn't required here, but will we still be able to? Professor Telvis grinned. Of course. The hope that you will be able to cast everything I teach you. The hope is that you will be able to cast everything I teach you by the end of the unit. Nothing in this class will be dangerous, and there are places around campus to practice more complicated spells if you think you need to. I also need the occasional hand to demonstrate some of what you will be learning. I was relieved I hadn't managed to cast anything since the accident in Dragon Tower. And they hadn't cast anything before that moment either. Well, if there are no questions, I'll introduce you to your first spell, Deflect. He looked around the room and pointed at Ponytail. Pegasus is in the first row. What's your name? Jarek Quicksilver. He sat up straighter as he answered. And since we finally know his name, I can talk about it. Which, honestly, I don't have that much to say, but I like his first name, which I admittedly just kind of made up. But his last name, the problems his last name have caused me. But yes, it was intentionally chosen for him. And yeah, there are reasons for that. I can't tell you those, though. I want you to throw that pen in your hand at me, as hard as you can, whenever you're ready. Jack looked back into the room. Our eyes met and saw me. He smirked, and I grinned back at him. He turned around and checked his pen. It spun 3 times in the air. Before it hit Professor Telvis, Telvis held up his left hand. With a delicate batting of his pinky, a thin, spherical shield of blue fog appeared for a second. The pen fell to the ground with a clatter. I mimicked the motion with my own hand. Deflect is the basis for all defensive magic. This version is simple and has a low energy cost. It can be cast quickly, but the drawback is that it isn't very strong. However, learning it and understanding its quirks will help you grasp the foundation of the more complicated spells. This might very well save your life one day. Hint, hint! He picked up the pen from the floor and tossed it into the air. I watched his hand as he pointed it towards Jared's desk and teleported away. Pixie in the back. What's your name? Professor Telvis focused his eyes on me. Serafina Stewart, sir. I saw you mimic the motion. That's an interesting habit and very helpful in this class. The rest of you should be doing the same thing when I demonstrate a spell. You don't want to get stuck trying to remember the motions of a spell if you need to get yourself out of trouble. I shrunk back a little as a few eyes flashed to me. A few faint whispers echoed in the room. Isn't that Ghost Girl? Spider Venom. Dragon Tower. I wanted to crawl under my desk. Why do teachers do this? The professor coughed loudly, then clapped 3 times. Now, on the count of 3, I want to see each of you try the motion for Deflect. 1, 2, 3. Battered his left pinky again, holding his hand in front of his face so we could all see it. I hid my hands beneath the desk. Well done, class, he looked around. Most of you have good form, but I wouldn't say any of you are ready for any kind of stress test. I would say don't practice in the towers, but I've taught to discourage you. If you do try, do it with crumpled up paper. One student nearly took his friend's eye out with a pen in a practice session gone wrong. And now we get to learn a bit about the magic system. There are no words. It's entirely based on hand gestures and intent. Also colors. Colors are important. I've said that a couple of times now, but colors are very important in this series. So pay attention, especially to colors of people's magic. Class ended, and I was one of the last to start heading out of the room. Professor Telvis called out to me before I could actually leave, though. Miss Stewart, a moment. I froze for a second, then turned and walked towards where he was standing. Is something wrong, sir? I asked cautiously. No, just an old man's curiosity. You wouldn't happen to be related to a Lucinda Stewart, would you? Uh-oh! Dun dun dun! I nodded. She is my mother. Is that an issue? A bolt of nerves ran through my body. No, not at all. She was my practical spellcraft teacher when I was your age. I noticed the resemblance. This was so awkward. Yeah, well, I'm not as good at this stuff as she is. I scratched the back of my head. Is that all you wanted? Please say yes. Yes, I know you have other classes to get to. I look forward to seeing you get better, Miss Stewart. I left as quickly as I could without running. As soon as I was officially out of the classroom, I was... They put you in Pixie? A voice asked. I got out of my skin. Next to the doorway was Jarek, one of the other would-be dragons. He raised an eyebrow at me. The blue Pegasus coat and tie didn't look right on him. It clashed with the green streak in his hair and the red of his eyes. They put you in Pegasus? I responded. Air-headed gossips that do little more than talk badly about everybody else. He rolled his eyes. I think I get why they let the towers choose. They suck at it. I nodded. The pixies are nice, I guess, but everything is so loud. I pulled out the coat. This is just a taste of what the tower is like. I have my fingers crossed that they get Dragon Tower sorted out. I'm starting to miss the spiders. He frowned. Yeah, sorry about earlier, by the way. I think I was a jerk. Great comeback, though. Best laugh I had since coming here. And now I know who that laughter was from before. That was Jarek. I shrugged at him. I don't do friendly that early. You don't have to apologize, though. Hopefully, everyone will forget about me as soon as romantic drama starts happening. Ugh, romance. No thanks. He smiled, amused. Good to see you're holding up. A couple days of gossip cycles and this should all go away. Patted me on the side of my arm and started to leave. I hope so. I smiled back at him and waved. See you around. Jarek's fun. I like him. He's had a few changes between this version of Jarek that we have and the one we almost got, who almost did something highly questionable, but that's ended up not happening because of circumstances of how last episode played out. You wouldn't know it looking at him, but there was a version of the story where Jarek drugged everybody with a truth potion. But, you know, things change. Good afternoon, everyone. Professor Dalek was standing with a podium next to a massive wall of reflective glass. In a classroom that held 30 desks in 6 rows of 5, there was a mix of salamanders and pixies, fairly evenly distributed through the room. In the reflection, I saw a familiar face amongst the salamanders. Good for him, getting the tower he actually wanted. Nice to see so many young and eager to learn faces this year. Dalek was all smiles, but that seemed to be how he was by default. I thought I understood how he became the head of Pixie Tower. Before we get down to business, I would like to propose a question to all of you. I don't want you to answer. I simply want you to think about it. How do you believe you will be remembered, and by whom? Most of us will never know, but think carefully on that answer, and try to live your life so that if the unthinkable happens tomorrow, you have an answer you can rest peacefully with. The room was quiet. This class will be mostly lectures. I will be testing you once every 2 weeks. Topics will be split into 4-week blocks, and at the end of those blocks will be a paper due related to the topic of that block. Any questions? No one raised their hands or said anything. All right. Well, this starting block will be about the history of our towers. The paper I want you to write should be about a small piece of the history of a certain tower I will be assigning you. Most of you won't get the tower that chose you. Questions? Still nothing. Now to assign all of you towers. He clapped twice, and in a puff of very pale pink smoke, paper appeared on my desk. Of course he gave me Dragon Tower. Why wouldn't he? Yeah. On the paper was an image of the tower from the outside. Simple in design, with a large pointed roof and a dragon statue that coiled around the whole tower. Dragon Tower was in big red letters at the bottom. I tried not to roll my eyes in case he saw. He was in charge of my tower, after all. But of course, there would be no towers without the people who built them. We should start the story where all stories should, at the very beginning. He tapped the glass behind him 3 times, and the reflection of the room vanished. In the glass, 5 portraits started to appear and lined themselves up neatly next to each other. Founders. From left to right we have Malcard, Florius, Delk, Colferna, and Jantris. There's a good chance you've at least heard of them, but who wants to guess how they earned their various monikers? Class was quiet for a few seconds, then a few hands shot up. Angelina was the only hand I could put a face to. What about you? Salamander in the second row. They took the castle by force, didn't they? The magical world was in the depths of a conflict we hadn't seen before or since. Magic was wild then. What we know as spellcraft today was all but non-existent. It wouldn't be invented and properly implemented for another 500 years. Malcard was the leader of the group, born to a long line of wizards and witches capable of taming fire. The only magic he knew was pyrokinetics. He had heard stories of a village decimated by a child using dark necromancy and thought to recruit him for his king. He and Jantris fought for 3 days and nights before Jantris relented. and followed him. Then the two became inseparable. Yeah, it's that anime trope of just like, oh, we've just spent 3 days trying to kill each other, but now we're gonna be best friends for life. that's these two. It's a terrible shame you won't be able to meet either of them. They became the king's main tools of war. Enchantress took a near lethal blow in the final battle and saved Melkar's life. Loris was a healer of a sort, and she got him back on his feet as she decided to travel with the pair once the war was officially over. It was on these travels they met Delk, a forest hermit who never liked company, but he took a liking to the trio and followed them back when they received a summons from the new king. The new king was young and after his father's murder, paranoid. His right hand, Colferna, did her best, but when torn between her king and the people he was supposed to protect, she made a choice that must have been difficult for her. She abandoned her post and helped a group of lords overthrow the king. The lords chose not to rule in the castle after seeing Enchantress's corpses roam the halls. He instead took over what was then a college for magic. The castle, after some severe modifications, was turned into a school. Towers were built to house the students, and as part of the agreement, Enchantress designed unique and very powerful wards defending the castle and all those within from all manner of attack. 2,000 years, and the school has remained unchanged since. What we call them, although now would come much, much later. For centuries, the founders were simply called by their name. Salamander in the first row raised his hand. I was told it was because of their powers. Ah, yes, Malkargan's fire, Loris knew duplication, Delk spoke with animals, Colferna's telepathic abilities, and of course, Enchantress and his infamous necromancy. Pay attention to this line. This will be important later. I'm drawing parallels to certain things here. So yeah, take notes. This is one of the lines that you definitely want to have notes on. Ugh. It couldn't have been that special. A familiar voice mumbled from 2 rows in front of me. Dalek laughed. Perhaps not. The powers themselves were not unique then, nor are they now. I believe somewhere in your spellcraft syllabus is a fire spell, and reading minds, while difficult, can be done with enough training and practice. But having something unique is not important. It's doing something unique with it. They help topple a spiraling empire, which, in my humble opinion, is far more special than a fancy parlor trick. I was just outside of the hallway and an orange coat suddenly blocked my path. You're looking better, he grinned. How's Pixie Tower? I inhaled slowly. There was too much pink within earshot for an honest answer. The people are nice, I said as evenly as I could. Is he got Salamander like you wanted? Is it everything you hoped for? He barked a laugh. Nope, I just like the color. People suck and the tower is tacky. I never thought there could be such a thing as too much flame-themed decor, but I do now. I laughed. More importantly, he leaned closer to Sage Whisper, tell me about the ghost you saw. Only if you promise not to laugh at me. He covered his heart and leaned back in a mockery of offense. Never! I would never make fun of someone who had been through a traumatic experience. How did he sound sincere and sarcastic at the same time? She was a student, wore a red uniform. I could see through her and she glowed blue. He looked at me closely and then hummed. Interesting. Did she see you? She was surprised to see me and told me I should start running. And then the spiders attacked. After the spider attack, I heard laughter. Not hers. Multiple voices. Ooh, he had a smirk on his face. Walk with me. I want to show you something. I followed next to him. I'm in a sea of students all headed in all directions. I recognized the route when we were halfway there. We're not going in, I told him firmly. I was not missing alchemy. Of course not. You have class and it's guarded. There's been at least one person outside and at least 3 on the inside doing the cleanup. Let out a relieved sigh. And here works. We slipped from the crowd and stood against the wall. There was a wide circle around the door to Dragon Tower. The professor I didn't recognize ushered students away. The door was being held open by what looked like a web of chains that glowed with a telling gray light. They aren't risking letting it close again, I observed. All the staff are tight-lipped about it, but according to a few Pegasuses, only a handful can get the password to work. Good job setting the password to open Sesame, by the way. Hilarious. In my defense, I genuinely didn't think it was going to work. The best part? The door opened before with a non-verbal password. Sure, that was a knock pattern. That's very strange and kind of suspicious. Here are the facts that I could find. Something is definitely in that tower besides spiders. We all saw something pull you in. You saw something when you were inside. I find it hard to believe there isn't a connection. He nodded. Exactly. And I think I know how to get an answer, but I will need your help. Before you finish that thought, I am not agreeing to anything that can get me expelled, and I am not going in there unless I know for sure all the spiders are gone. Understand? I mean, honestly, that's kind of fair. He nodded. That's fair. And when they're done, I want to hold seance. I have the stuff, but if whatever is in there isn't showing itself to others, it might be useless without you around. What do you think? Okay, but now we have to get to class. He nodded and started to wander off. Wait, I pinched the sleeve of his coat. Before I forget, what's your name? I don't think we ever introduced ourselves. He turned his head at me and he thought for a second. You didn't. How rude of me. My mother would be appalled. I'm Russell Kingsley. He performed an elaborate formal bow. I'd curtsy, but I'm wearing pants. I smiled at him. I'm Seraphina Stewart. I'll see you around. He waved and left. I headed towards Alchemy at a hurried pace. And that will be our last episode for today. So if any of you have final thoughts or anything, now is a great time. I'm gonna switch this to chatting. So yeah, that's my book that I wrote, and we can pick this up right here next week, where we can continue on from episode 7 to wherever. Thank everyone here for showing up and being in chat, and I'm happy to see all of you here. And I will see you all next stream, whenever that is, and whatever content that will be. Again, this same time next Thursday, we will be continuing here. And in between then, there might be a few. Seraphina actually became unconscious from the spider attack, and it's all a dream. I think she wishes that some days. She's just can I be in a coma? Can this be plot twist? It's all a dream, or she's been in a coma the whole time, or something. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, be back here same time next Thursday. Might do some video game streams between here and then. And thank you all again for showing up and being here. It means the world to me. And I will see you all next time, whenever that is. Goodbye, everybody.